No.
No.
What do we look like first?
Tweet, tweet.
Nobody tweets. I don't tweet either. I understand Facebook. You know, you've got to be friends with somebody on Facebook in order to communicate with them. But apparently what I've understood about tweeting is you can tweet anybody in the whole world and they can tweet you back. You don't have to be friends with them. You can just tweet. I read a story about a woman by the name of Victoria Carlin. She lives in London. She works for a circus. And she saw a tweet by a man that works for Waterstone Books in London, England. And it struck her fancy. She thought that was the funniest tweet she's ever seen in her entire life. And she said, I love this tweet, so I want to marry this man who sent out this tweet. And so all her friends said, well, if you want to marry him, why don't you just ask him for a date? So she starts tweeting this guy. And they start tweeting back and forth. And he tweets out one day that he's got a hankering for some donuts. I don't think he said the word hankering in England. But he has a hankering for some donuts. And so she went out to the donut shop and bought him a donut, went to Waterstone Bookstore and gave him the donut. Asked her out on a date, and they began dating, and 3 years later, they married. They had a picture of their wedding day, and it went viral on the internet. Just the most beautiful story ever. And you think about the internet and all the bad things that can happen on the internet, but there's a lot of good things that can happen on the internet. Some of these Christian dating services, and it's helpful in finding a mate, and there's a lot of good things that can happen on the internet. And that's one of the best things that have ever happened to us is to be married. Find that woman, and that woman find that man. Now, we've been studying the book of Song of Songs, or the Song of Solomon. And if you remember the first chapter, we talked about this woman. She's the Shulamite. We don't know why we call it the Shulamite. That might be a female version of Solomon. It might be the indication of where she lived. But she's the Shulamite, and she's been oppressed by her brothers. You know, she's like Cinderella. And she's out working in the fields, and she has this low self-esteem. And then she meets her lover, which we refer to as Solomon. He builds her up, he encourages her. And in chapter 2, she says, I'm the rose of Sharon, the lily of the valleys. Suddenly, she has this self-esteem that she never had before because of her lover. And then in chapter 3, we saw that how she wrestled. You know, you want to maintain your virginity. You want to make sure that you've got the right man. So she's wrestling and struggling with that. And then at the end of the chapter, we saw Solomon come for her in a carriage. Now, in the ancient world, that's how men would proceed in the area of marriage. He would first ask for the woman's hand in marriage, ask the mother and father for her hand in marriage, and then he would come and he would take her off in a carriage. So symbolic, what's happened in that chapter is that she has married him. And what I'd like to do this morning is look the day of that marriage, then the evening of their wedding. And it's found in chapter 4 of the Song of Solomon. So let's take a look at it. Chapter 4, Song of Solomon. Song of Songs, chapter 4, verse 1. How beautiful you are, my darling. How beautiful. Your eyes behind your veil are as doves. Your hair is like a flock of goats descending from Mount Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of sheep just shorn, coming up from the washing. Each has its twin, not one of them is alone. Your lips are like a scarlet ribbon. Your mouth is lovely. Your temples behind your veil are like halves of a pomegranate. Your neck is like the Tower of David, filled with elegance. On it hang 1,000 shields, all of them shields of warriors. Your breasts are like two fawns, like twin fawns of a gazelle that browse among the lilies. Until the brave breaks and the shadows flee, I will go to the mountain of myrrh, and I will go to the house of incense, and go to the hill of incense. How beautiful you are, my darling. There is no flaw in you. Father, we thank you so much for this relationship that we call marriage, Lord. We thank you for that wonderful gift, Lord. And as we explore this today, Father, help us to appreciate it even more, to defend it more thoroughly, Lord, and to thank you for what you've given to us. In the precious name of Jesus, amen. Our featured book this summer is Solomon's Song of Love by Craig Glickman. Craig tells a story he's on an airplane with a friend of his. Now this friend is married, and so there's a stewardess walking down the aisle. Now this guy is married, he's in anything to lose with women, so he doesn't care what he says. The stewardess is walking down the aisle, and his friend looks at the stewardess and says, "Your hair is like a flock of goats coming down from Mount Gilead." This stewardess turned her head, walked away, and never spoke to them again for the rest of the flight. Now I don't know what Blickman. I know him. I'm sure he just yucked this all up. But what the story describes is the difficulty of translating one metaphor from one culture into another one. What he's saying when he says that her hair is like a flock of goats coming down Mount Gilead, it's like you can picture this beautiful mountain, and in the back you're looking at this flock of goats coming down this black stream just flowing down this mountain. It's sensuous, it's beautiful, and that's what he's saying about her hair. She has sensuous, beautiful hair. He describes her eyes as being like doves, pure, sincere, honest. And it's interesting, when the Shulamite describes her love for him, she describes his eyes in the same way. They're like the eyes of a dove, simple and pure and sincere. And he says that her temples are like half a pomegranate. Now when he speaks of temples, I think he's talking about the whole side of the face, I think including the cheekbone. Pomegranates are the fruit of romance in the ancient world. They're red. And I don't know a lot about women's makeup, but I remember years ago they used to wear rouge. I don't even know if women wear rouge anymore or not, but that rouge makes them look so much attractive and very, very sensuous and lovely. And that's what he's saying about her cheeks. He describes them as being like pomegranates, red. And he describes her lips as being like a red ribbon. The word ribbon probably is better translated thread. It's the Hebrew word hum, and the Hebrew word hum means thread. So it's a red thread. And what he's saying is your lips are finely distinguished. They're very fine features, and they're red, they're beautiful, and they're just wonderful. And then he describes her teeth. They're like sheep that have been shorn and freshly washed. I guess the idea there is that they're white because of the washing, and they're finally shorn, that they're white. And he says that the teeth match. They're not crooked, they're absolutely perfectly formed. But there's something else about that metaphor. They're like sheep, like little animals. When Ellen and I were coming home from North Carolina a couple of weeks ago, we're driving along, and along the side of the road we see a fawn, a little baby fawn. Oh, look, there's a little fawn. Oh, honey, it's so cute. Oh, it just brings smiles to your face when you see those little animals. And that's what I think he's talking about her when he sees these sheep. Her teeth are like sheep. They're like little animals that make you smile. Her smile makes him smile. And then he describes her neck as like the Tower of David. I mean, does that mean she looks like a giraffe? I'm not sure. Maybe.
Except for that giraffes have east.
Okay, but necks often describe personalities. Like we might say somebody's stiff-necked. We're describing what they are. They're like they're hard-nosed, hard to get along with. Or somebody that's stooped over and has a stooped over neck. We think of them as being humble. And there's a great story in our Daily Bread yesterday about a man that walked over, stooped over. He's so humble, he bent his neck over all the time that the neck actually became stuck in that position. But the neck speaks of our personality. And when he says that she's got a neck like the Tower of David, it's a term of respect, because men would come by and they would look at that Tower of David representing the power of the military of King David. It was a term of respect, and men would hang their shields on that tower. And maybe there's an indication too that she's hanging things from her neck, jewelry or earrings from her ears or something like that. But it's a term of great respect. It's a term that says that you are lovely, you are wonderful. And then he says her breasts are like fawns, and the breasts are like fawns in the sense that they're soft and they're becoming, they're wanting to be touched and handled. And so he describes the Shulamite in these terms. And then he goes on and he says in verse 7, see if I can get this right. "Oh, beautiful you are, my darling. There is no flaw in you." I'm one of these guys. I'll go to the stake of the inerrancy of Scripture. I believe that every word in that Bible is true, except maybe for this verse. I mean, how could it possibly be? No, she doesn't have a flaw. I've never met a human being in the world that doesn't have a flaw. But in his eyes and his mind, this woman has no flaw. And if you realize and you look at the way he's described in those 7 terms, they equal the term. 7 is the number of perfection. She's perfect in his eyes. I was reading an article from the Washington Post. It's a review of a play that's being played in the theaters. The play's called War Paint. And you know what war paint is for women. You know, you go with a man or you go to find a man, you put on your war paint, your mascara and whatever eyelash, or whatever you do, I don't really know, but they put on their war paint. And that's the name of the play, it's the name of the production. And what the play is about the story of Helena Rubinstein and Elizabeth Arden and their battle for the cosmetic industry. And it's interesting how Revlon stuck in there because Revlon had a better understanding of how to present their products through the media, that they actually win the war. But this is the battle that they're having. And the reviewer of that play said that the reason that this play is popular, and the whole purpose of it is it shows that there's a battle for the insecurities of women. And you think about it. You think about what it's like to be a woman. And you look at all these other women. Oh, she's got longer hair than I do. Oh, she's got prettier hair than I do. Oh, she's got longer legs than I do. Oh, she's got shorter legs than I do. She's got a bigger waist, smaller waist, longer arms. And they're constantly comparing one another. And there's these deep-seated insecurities that women have. Because men are looking at other women. And women become insecure about it. What I propose today is that we compliment our wives. We compliment our women. Make sure that that woman in your eyes is the greatest woman in the world, and that you don't even have an indication in the world that you would look at anybody else. She is without flaw in your life. She's beautiful, everything about her. Find ways to compliment her. Find ways to build her characteristic. She has no flaws. Once in a while, though, you do find flaws. And I read an article once that says, if you fall in love with someone and want to marry them for their flaws. Don't marry them in spite of their flaws, but marry them for their flaws. And I was thinking last week, I found a flaw in my wife. It's really cool, really a great moment. I was taking my wife's mother to the doctor, and she was in there with the doctor, and I was watching the television, and then there was a segment on the television that said that dental flossing is not good for you. And I said, oh my gosh, my wife flosses with dental floss all the time. She does it every night. So immediately after taking her home, I went immediately to the store where it works. I said, honey, I love you very much, but I found a flaw in your life. Your dental floss. You realize how much money you're costing us because of all this dental flossing that you're doing. Now, I don't know who put out the report. I have a sneaking suspicion that it's somebody that has a vested interest in tooth decay. I don't know. Well, I was going to check with her dentist this week to make sure that whether flossing is really good for you or not. But my point is this. If there's a flaw, you can talk it out in a kind, loving way. Keep building up your women. Keep telling them how wonderful and beautiful they are. And if there's something that's bothering you, find that flaw in her and talk it out. Keep encouraging. Keep building her up. That's what we need to do. We need to keep building up their outer characteristics. But he goes on now, and he begins to build her up for her inner characteristics. So let's pick up in verse 8. Come with me from Lebanon, my bride. Come with me from Lebanon. The sound from the crest of Amana, to the top of Shinir, the summit of Hermon, from the lion's dens and the mountain haunts of the leopard. You have stolen my heart, my sister, my bride. You have stolen my heart. With one glance of your eyes, with one jewel of your necklace. How beautiful is your love, my sister, my bride. How much more pleasing is your love than wine, and the fragrance of your perfume than spice. Your lips drop sweetness as the honeycomb, my bride. Milk and honey are under your tongue. The fragrance of your garment is like that of Lebanon. You are a garden locked up, my sister, my bride. You are a spring enclosed, a sealed fountain. Your plants are the orchard of pomegranates, with choice fruits, with henna and nard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, with every kind of incense tree, with myrrh and aloes and all the finest spices. You are a garden fountain, a well of flowing water streaming from Lebanon. Awake north wind, and come south wind. blow on my garden, that its fragrance may spread abroad. Let my lover come into his garden and taste its fruit. For a second, looking back at verse 6. He says to her, until the day breaks and the shadows flee, I will go to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of incense. What he's doing is he's fulfilling a request that she makes back in the second chapter. And that's chapter 2, verse 17. She says this, until the day breaks and the shadows flee, turn, my lover, and be like a gazelle or a young stag on the rugged mountains. What he's going to do is they're going to consummate the marriage now, but they're going to do it in a way that he exalts her inner qualities. It's what we would call foreplay. We might call it petty. We might call it focusing our attention on our lover so that we can consummate the marriage. And he says this. He says, come from Lebanon. And this is the reason, one of the ideas that we have, that this woman, the Shulamite, probably or possibly from Lebanon. And so he says, come out of Lebanon, come away from Mount Hermon, where all the lions' dens and the leopards are. Now, archaeologists and people that are Bible students and Bible scholars have looked around Mount Hermon for years. They've never found a lion or a leopard near Mount Hermon. What it is a figure of speech. Come away from all that fears you. Come away from all that's frightening you. Remember we talked about this last week when she talked about wrestling with her virginity. And what he's saying is, come out from all that fear. Because if we're going to consummate the marriage, we've got to focus. We've got to focus in on what we're doing here, not your fears, not your inner rumblings. Be strong. Be in conclusion of what we're doing here. And he says that you've stolen my heart, my sister. You've stolen my heart because of her inner qualities. She's stolen his heart, and her love for him has caused him to just be exuberant. He says that your love is more pleasing than wine. I'm an abstemious guy myself, but I don't think Christianity is an abstemious religion. I think wine can boost our morale, wine can encourage us, and wine is something to be appreciated. But he says that you, because of your inner qualities, are more pleasing to me than wine. You are delightful, my sister. He refers to her as her sister. Men in the ancient world would often refer to their wives as their sister. And he says that your lips are sweet, and there's milk and honey under your tongue. If you remember how God described the promised land, he described it as a land of milk and honey, a land of spiritual blessing, a land of riches. That's her tongue. Her tongue has spiritual riches, blessing. And the French think that they introduced French kissing. That's what he's talking about here. He's talking about fulfilling their consummating their marriage. And he's extolling her for her virtues. And he says to her that your virginity, he's extolling her for her virginity. He says, you are like a garden locked up, my sister. You are a spring enclosed, a sealed fountain. And he begins to describe the garden. But look what she says in verse 16. She says, awake, north wind, come and south wind, blow on my garden, and that fragrance may spread abroad. Let my lover come into his garden and taste its choice fruit. What he's doing is she's inviting him to come to the garden. It's what we would call an extended metaphor. You take the metaphor of the garden for virginity, extended it by way of invitation, and he takes up the invitation. Look at verse 5, chapter 5, verse 1. I have come into the garden, my sister, my bride. I have gathered my myrrh with my spice. Consummating the marriage in the most beautiful act that God could ever give us. When I was down in North Carolina with my wife, we were out. She said, I want to go shopping. I'm like the world's worst shopper. I go into the department store for 5 minutes and I go, is there a seat? Is there a bed I could lay down? I'm all worn out from all this shopping. I can't take shopping. So you go shopping I'll go next door into the bookstore. And I love bookstores. I mean, this is one place I really can shop. So you go into that bookstore and browse and browse. And I don't understand why people buy books. But you go to these bookstores, you can sit there and read the books all day long. They don't bother you at all. So it's a wonderful place. So I'm looking at the books, but I'm also looking over, there's a magazine rack. And I started looking at the magazines. And I see Playboy magazine. Now, I haven't seen Playboy magazine since Moby Dick was a minnow. I mean, it's been years since I've seen Playboy magazine. But I've heard that Playboy magazine no longer has a centerfold. So immediately I opened up the thing and just immediately looked for the centerfold. And lo and behold, there's no centerfold. I said, man, this is great. You guys are on the right track. It's a step in the right direction. You're a long way from being a Christ-honoring magazine, but at least it's a step in the direction. But don't fret. Don't fret. There's plenty of other pornographic magazines to take its place. There's plenty of other pornographic sites on the internet. There's pornography everywhere. As we're driving home from North Carolina, we're looking at these more and more of these porn shops and sex shops and all this kind of stuff going on. How degrading it is to that beautiful act between a man and a woman. And Paul says it in 1 Corinthians chapter 7. He says that a man's body belongs to the woman and a woman's body belongs to the man. It's a sacred institution. And to see people violent, to debase it is disgusting. In the 13th chapter of the book of Hebrews, the writer of the book of Hebrews is in his closing argument, he's given this wonderful defense that these people should go back to worshiping God and do it through Jesus Christ. He says, be careful. There's things that can take you away from Christ. There's things that can destroy your spirit. And one of those things is false teachers. Be careful of false teachers. They will ruin your spirituality. Be careful who you listen to. Be careful. They'll ruin your spirituality. The other thing he says too is that watch out for riches. Watch out for money. You become a money grubber. You start following money all the time. That will destroy your relationship with Christ. That will destroy your spirituality. But the number one reason for spiritual loss, for the loss of people's spirituality, is that the bedroom becomes defiled. Then we need to make sure that our eyes are on our wife and our wife only. But we need to proclaim her beauty and her characteristics to her so that she knows with absolute certainty that your eyes are on her and her only. And we need to proclaim her inner beauty. And we need to ensure that she's building herself up spiritually, that she's bonding together spiritually. We need to start praying together. We need to start going to church together and reading the Bible together. Just encouraging in whatever way you can her spiritual development. It's something that God has given us. God has just given us this perfect gift. Don't let Satan come by and destroy it. You know, over by Glen Park, every weekend, it seems like every weekend, there's a married couple over there getting their pictures taken by the Glen. And I got to ask my wife this, because it was so many years ago. I swear that we were over there many years ago getting our pictures, our wedding pictures were taken by the Glen, but I wouldn't swear it. But every time I see that long stretched limo, and I know there's a bride in there, I slow down because I want to get a peek at the bride. I always want to take a look at that bride. And every bride I've ever seen is beautiful. In my eyes, every bride on the face of this earth is beautiful. In the eyes of God, every bride on the face of this earth is beautiful. And in the eyes of that groom, that newly married man, his bride is the most beautiful person in the world. And he needs to continually tell her that. He needs to be continually extolling her beautiful characteristics and all the things that make him happy. He needs to extol all her inner qualities. And he needs to make sure that Satan and his henchmen do not take and rip what God has given to us. This beautiful, beautiful gift of marriage that men and women have. Don't let Satan take it away from you. Don't let Satan destroy your spirituality. I think that's the lesson that we can learn from this fourth chapter of Song of Songs. Let's pray. Father, we thank you so much for your word today. And Lord, we thank you for the challenge issued to us by Solomon, Lord. And, Father, that we may keep our marriages pure, Lord. That you just bless us, Lord, because those marriages represent you, Lord. They represent the very Trinity, Lord. And we thank you so much for that, Lord. Bless us, Lord. Keep us pure. Keep us walking with Christ. We pray in the precious name of the Savior. Amen.